The stars looked different this far from Earth. Taman wiped the sweat from his forehead as he tightened the last bolt on the coolant pipe. Working in the engine room of a mining colony cargo ship was hot, dirty work, but it paid well. At 28 years old, he had already saved enough money to buy his own small transport vessel. Just 6 more months of work, and he would be free to explore the galaxy on his own terms. The mining colony of New Haven floated in orbit around a gas giant. Thousands of workers like Taman lived there, harvesting rare minerals from the planet's moons. It was dangerous work, but humans had a reputation for going places other species would not dare. That reputation made them valuable. It also made them targets. Taman checked his datapad. The cargo manifest showed 3 more containers to load before the ship could depart. He climbed down from the engine platform and headed toward the cargo bay. The metal floors clanked under his boots. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. The lights flickered once, then twice. Taman stopped walking. His hand moved to the wrench hanging from his belt. Something felt wrong. In his 3 years working on colony ships, the power had never flickered like that. The backup systems should have kicked in immediately. Then the alarm started screaming. Red lights bathed the corridor in an angry glow. Taman ran toward the cargo bay, but the blast doors slammed shut before he could reach them. He spun around looking for another route. Behind him, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. It was the hiss of a hull breach being sealed, followed by the heavy thud of magnetic boots on metal. They were not human boots. Taman ducked behind a support beam and peered around the corner. 3 figures moved down the corridor toward him. They were tall, much taller than any human. Their bodies were covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb the red emergency lights. Yellow eyes glowed in the darkness. Valkyr raiders. Everyone in the colonies knew about them. They were pirates who specialized in one thing: kidnapping. The Valkyr moved with practiced efficiency. One of them carried a scanning device, sweeping it back and forth across the corridor. Taman held his breath. He knew the scanner would find him within seconds. His mind raced through options. Fight? 3 against 1, and they were armed with energy weapons while he only had a wrench. Run? Where? The blast doors were locked. The scanner beeped. The Valkyr turned toward his hiding spot. Taman made his decision. He burst from behind the beam and threw his wrench at the nearest raider. The tool spun through the air and struck the Valkyr in the face. The creature stumbled backward, hissing in pain. Taman did not wait to see what happened next. He ran. Behind him, he heard angry shouts in a language that sounded like gravel scraping across metal. Energy bolts sizzled past his head, leaving scorch marks on the walls. Taman zigzagged through the corridor, using every piece of cover he could find. He knew this ship better than they did. That was his only advantage. He reached a service hatch and yanked it open. The crawl space beyond was narrow, barely wide enough for a human. Perfect. The Valkyr were too large to follow him easily. Taman crawled into the darkness, pulling the hatch shut behind him. For a moment, he allowed himself to breathe. His heart hammered against his ribs. Sweat dripped into his eyes. He could hear the Valkyr on the other side of the hatch, arguing with each other. Then he heard something that made his stomach drop. The sound of a plasma cutter igniting. They were cutting through the hatch. Taman crawled faster, his knees and elbows scraping against the metal. The service tunnel led to the lower decks, where the life support systems were housed. If he could reach the emergency pods, maybe he could escape. The tunnels were a maze, but he had memorized every route during his orientation. He was halfway to the lower deck when the tunnel filled with smoke. Something was burning. Taman coughed and pulled his shirt over his mouth. The Valkyr had pumped some kind of gas into the ventilation system. His eyes watered. His lungs burned. He tried to keep crawling, but his limbs felt heavy. The last thing he remembered was the hatch ahead of him opening. A scaled hand reached in and grabbed his ankle. Then everything went black. When Taman woke up, his head felt like someone had hit it with a hammer. He tried to move, but his hands were bound behind his back with something that felt like metal wire. His feet were tied, too. He was lying on a cold floor that vibrated with the hum of engines. Ship engines, but not the cargo vessel he had been working on. These engines had a different rhythm. He opened his eyes slowly. The room was small and dark, lit only by a dim blue light strip along the ceiling. The walls were made of some kind of black metal he did not recognize. There was a door, but no handle on his side. A cell. He was in a prison cell. Taman sat up, ignoring the pain in his head. He looked around carefully, trying to gather information. The cell was about 3 meters square, empty except for him. No windows, no furniture, just the cold floor and the humming walls. He tested his bindings. The metal wire was tight, but not impossible. If he had time and something sharp, he might be able to cut through it. But time was something he probably did not have. The door suddenly hissed open. Light flooded in, making Taman squint. A massive figure stepped into the cell, blocking the doorway. The Valkyr stood at least 2.5 meters tall. Its scales were a deep red color, darker than the others he had seen. It wore armor decorated with marks that might have been rank insignia. The Valkyr stared down at Taman with those yellow eyes. When it spoke, its voice was surprisingly clear despite the alien accent. "Human, you will be valuable. Your people will pay much to have you returned." Taman said nothing. He met the Valkyr's gaze and kept his face blank. Inside, his mind was already working. Engineers solved problems. That was what they did. This was just another problem to solve. The Valkyr seemed amused by his silence. "I am Captain Drakor. This is my ship, the Crimson Talon. You are my property now until your government pays the ransom. Do not try to escape. Do not cause trouble. If you cooperate, you will not be harmed." Drakor turned to leave, then paused. "Your kind has a reputation for being clever. Unpredictable. Good. That makes you worth more." The captain laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "But not clever enough to escape from me." The door hissed shut. Darkness returned. Taman leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. He was not afraid. Fear was useless. Instead, he began to think. He replayed everything he had seen. The layout of the corridors he had been dragged through while unconscious. The sounds of the ship's engines. The way the door mechanism worked. Every detail was a piece of a puzzle. And Taman was very good at solving puzzles. 6 months until he could buy his own ship, he had thought. That timeline had just changed. Now, he needed a new plan. And as he sat in the darkness of his cell, listening to the alien ship hum around him, a small smile crossed his face. Because Taman had already noticed something important, something the Valkyr had overlooked. The ventilation grate in the corner of his cell was loose. 3 days passed in the darkness of the cell. Taman marked time by counting the intervals between when guards brought food. The meals arrived twice per cycle, which he guessed meant every 12 hours. The food was some kind of protein paste that tasted like metal and dirt. He ate it anyway. Staying strong was important. During those 3 days, Taman learned everything he could about his prison. He memorized the guards' schedules. There were 2 of them, and they rotated shifts. One was lazy and barely looked into the cell. The other was more careful, but still predictable. They both wore armor and carried energy rifles. The loose ventilation grate remained his secret. He had tested it on the first night, working quietly while the ship's engines were loudest. The grate could be removed, but the shaft beyond was too small for him to fit through. Still, it was useful. He could hear conversations in other parts of the ship through the ventilation system. That was how he learned about the other prisoner. On the 3rd night, Taman pressed his ear to the open grate and listened. Voices echoed through the metal tunnels. 2 guards were talking in broken galactic common, the trade language most species used. "Princess worth more than human," one guard said. Captain wants triple ransom for her, the other replied. Litheron Empire will pay anything for royal blood. What if they attack instead of pay? Captain has plan. We meet Krell Syndicate at station. Sell both prisoners if ransom takes too long. Taman pulled back from the grate. His mind processed this new information. There was another prisoner, a princess from the Litheron Empire. He had heard of the Litheron before. They were one of the most powerful diplomatic species in the galaxy, peaceful but influential. If the Valkyr had kidnapped royalty, this situation was bigger than he thought. The mention of the Krell Syndicate was worse news. The Krell were slavers and criminals who operated outside galactic law. If Dracor sold them to the Krell, there would be no ransom negotiations. No going home. Taman lay back on the cold floor and stared at the ceiling. 3 days until they reached the station. 3 days to find a way out. The next morning, everything changed. The guards came earlier than usual. They yanked Taman to his feet and cut his ankle bindings, but left his hands tied. One guard pushed him toward the door, while the other kept an energy rifle pointed at his back. "Move!" the guard grunted. They marched him down a corridor made of the same black metal as his cell. Taman's engineering mind automatically cataloged details. Riveted hull plates, emergency bulkheads every 20 meters, power conduits running along the ceiling. The ship was old, maybe 50 years or more. Older ships meant more mechanical systems instead of computerized ones. That could be useful. They stopped at another cell door. The guard pressed a control panel and the door hissed open. They shoved Taman inside and the door sealed behind him. This cell was different from his previous one. It was larger, maybe 5 meters square, and it had 2 occupants. One was Taman, the other was sitting in the far corner, watching him with eyes that seemed to glow with an inner light. She was unlike any being Taman had ever seen. Her skin had an iridescent quality, shifting between shades of blue and purple in the dim light. She was humanoid in shape, with 2 arms and 2 legs, but her features were delicate and sharp. Her hair, if it could be called that, looked like fine silver threads that moved slightly, even though there was no breeze. She wore the torn remains of what had once been elegant robes. This had to be the princess. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then she spoke in perfect galactic common. "You are the human they captured from the mining colony." Her voice was clear and musical, with an accent Taman could not place. He nodded slowly. "My name is Hana," she continued. "I am of the Litheron royal family, 3rd daughter of the Empress ruling council." "And you are?" "Taman, I am an engineer. I worked on a cargo ship." Hana tilted her head, studying him. "You do not seem afraid." "Being afraid does not help," Taman said. He moved to sit against the wall opposite her, keeping a respectful distance. "You are the princess they plan to ransom." "You have good hearing," Hana said with a slight smile. "Yes. They contacted my family 4 days ago. The negotiations are not going well. The Empress Council does not negotiate with pirates as a matter of policy. They will send military ships instead." "That will take time," Taman said. "We do not have time. I heard the guards talking. Captain Dracor plans to sell us to the Krell Syndicate in 3 days if the ransoms do not come through." Hana's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. That was fear, Taman realized. She knew what the Krell Syndicate meant. "Then we must escape before that happens," she said simply. Taman almost laughed. "Escape? From a ship full of armed Valkyr pirates, while locked in a cell?" "Yes," Hana said, and her eyes brightened again. "You are an engineer. You solve problems. I am a diplomat. I manipulate situations. Together we have skills they do not expect." She was right, Taman realized. The Valkyr saw them as helpless prisoners, valuable cargo to be traded. They would not expect cooperation between a human and a Litheron. They would not expect resistance. "What do you know about this ship?" Taman asked. Hana leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper, even though they were alone. "I have been observing the guards for 7 days. I speak 4 languages fluently, including 2 Valkyr dialects they do not know I understand. I have learned much by listening." Over the next hour, Hana shared what she had discovered. The Crimson Talon was a modified freighter, heavily armed but with a small crew of only 15 Valkyr. The ship's weakness was its centralized life support system. All the air, water, and temperature controls ran through a single hub on the lower deck. The Valkyr were cold-blooded reptiles. They needed specific temperatures to function well. If someone could access the life support hub, Hana said, they could make the temperature uncomfortable. Not deadly, but enough to cause chaos and confusion. "Someone would need to get out of this cell first," Taman pointed out. "Yes." Hana glanced at the door. "I have been observing the guards' routines. The one called Skrath is lazy. He comes alone sometimes. The other one, Vrex, is more careful. But Vrex has a weakness." "What weakness?" "He is superstitious. He believes Litheron royalty have mental powers. We do not, of course. But he does not know that." Taman began to see the outline of a plan forming. "If you could convince Vrex that you were reading his mind or affecting his thoughts, he might become distracted, fearful. He might make a mistake. And if Skrath came alone, thinking we were helpless, we might have an opportunity." They looked at each other across the cell. An engineer and a princess, a human and a Litheron, 2 prisoners who should have nothing in common. But they both understood the situation perfectly. "We have to work together," Hana said. "My people and yours, we have never been close allies. But this situation requires trust." Taman extended his bound hands as far as the wire would allow. "I trust people who want to survive. You want to survive. So do I. That is enough." Hana reached out and touched his bound hands with her own. Her skin was cool and smooth. "Then we have an agreement. We escape together or not at all." "Together," Taman agreed. For the first time since his capture, Taman felt something other than calculation and cold planning. He felt hope. Not because escape would be easy. It would not be. Not because the odds were good. They were not. But because he was no longer alone. The Valkyr had made a critical mistake. They had put 2 prisoners together, thinking it would save resources, thinking 2 captives in one cell was more efficient than 2 separate cells. They did not understand that 2 minds working together were infinitely more dangerous than 2 minds working alone. As the ship hummed around them and the hours ticked down toward their sail to the Krell Syndicate, Taman and Hana began to plan. The Valkyr would soon learn an important lesson. Never underestimate prisoners who have nothing left to lose. The plan began with observation. Taman and Hana spent the next day watching every detail of their prison. They counted seconds between guard rotations. They memorized the sound each guard's footsteps made. They studied the cell door mechanism, noting how the lock engaged and disengaged. "Vrex comes in exactly 4 hours, Hana whispered. "Skrath comes 2 hours after that. Then Vrex again. The pattern never changes." Taman nodded. He was lying on his back, staring at the ceiling. To any observer, he looked like a defeated prisoner passing time. In reality, he was studying the power conduits that ran across the ceiling above them. The electrical system runs through every corridor. Old design. Probably uses physical circuit breakers instead of smart switches. "Can you use that?" "Maybe, if I had tools. If I could reach the conduits. If I had time." Taman sat up. Too many ifs. Hana was quiet for a moment. Then she said something unexpected. "Tell me about human engineering. Your species builds things differently than mine does." "Why do you want to know?" Because understanding how you think will help us work together better. It made sense. Taman thought about how to explain. Humans build things to be fixed. We expect systems to break, so we make them accessible, modular. We build in redundancies and manual overrides. Other species build things to last forever, but when they break, they cannot be repaired easily. And Valkyr ships? Valkyr ships are stolen or modified from other species. The Crimson Talon was probably a cargo freighter once. They added weapons and armor, but the basic systems are still underneath. That means there are weak points they do not know about. Hana's eyes glowed brighter. Weak points we might exploit. Exactly. The door suddenly hissed open. Both prisoners fell silent immediately. Vrex entered, carrying 2 containers of the protein paste they were fed. The Valkyr guard was massive, his dark green scales covered in old scars. He kept his energy rifle pointed at them while he set down the food containers. Hana stood slowly, her movements graceful. She tilted her head and stared at Vrex without blinking. The guard's yellow eyes flickered toward her nervously. "You are afraid," Hana said softly. Vrex grunted. "Shut up, princess. You think about your mate. She is on the planet you came from. You wonder if you will see her again." Hana took a step closer. "You dream about her every sleep cycle." The guard's scales rippled, a sign of distress. "How do you—" He stopped himself. "Mind tricks will not work on me." "I am not trying tricks," Hana said, her voice smooth as water. "I am simply seeing what is already there. Your fear, your doubt. You know what Captain Dracor plans. You know that selling prisoners to the Krell Syndicate will anger powerful governments. My empire, the human colonies. Is the profit worth making such enemies?" Vrex's hand tightened on his rifle. "Captain's orders are captain's orders." "Of course." Hana sat back down gracefully. "I understand loyalty. But loyal soldiers often die for captains who do not care about them." The guard backed toward the door, clearly disturbed. He left quickly, and the door sealed behind him. Taman waited a full minute before speaking. "How did you know about his mate?" Hana smiled slightly. "I did not. But most Valkyr mate for life. They wear a specific pattern of scale scarring on their left shoulder to show their bonded status. Vrex has that marking. The rest was simply reading his body language and making educated guesses. You are good at this. Diplomacy is about understanding what people want and what they fear. Vrex wants to survive. He fears making powerful enemies. I simply reminded him that those 2 goals might be in conflict. Will it work? Not immediately. But seeds of doubt take time to grow. We plant them now, and we use them later. Over the next hours, they refined their plan. It was desperate and dangerous, with more things that could go wrong than things that could go right. But it was a plan. The core idea was simple: create chaos, exploit it, reach the life support hub, and use the ship's systems against the Valkyr. The execution would be anything but simple. "We need tools," Taman said. "Something to cut these bindings, something to pry open access panels, something to use as a weapon if necessary." "The waste disposal," Hana suggested. "When the guards take us to empty the waste container, there might be things we can take. Broken parts. Discarded items. They search us afterward. They search our hands in obvious places, but there are ways to hide small items." Hana demonstrated by sliding her fingers along a seam in her torn robes. "The fabric here can hold thin objects, and you have pockets in your work clothes, yes?" Taman checked. His colony work suit had several pockets. The guards had emptied them when they captured him, but the pockets themselves were still there. Some had inner seams that could hide flat objects. "We take what we can," he said. "Build our tools piece by piece." The opportunity came sooner than expected. Scrath arrived with their next meal and grunted at them. "Waste disposal, both of you. Move." This was unusual. Normally only one prisoner went at a time, but Taman and Hana did not question their luck. They stood and shuffled toward the door, their feet still bound with short chains that let them walk but not run. Scrath led them down the corridor to a small room with waste containers and a disposal chute. "Empty those, fast. I do not have all cycle." The guard stood in the doorway, his rifle lowered but ready. He looked bored. This was routine for him. Taman and Hana emptied the containers into the disposal chute. While they worked, Taman's eyes scanned the room. There, in the corner, a small maintenance panel hung half open. Inside, he could see the edge of what looked like a pipe-fitting tool. It was not much, but it was something. He caught Hana's eye and glanced toward the panel. She understood immediately. She stumbled slightly, letting out a small cry. Scrath's attention shifted to her for just a second. That second was enough. Taman's hand shot out and grabbed the tool, palming it smoothly. He slipped it into the inner seam of his pocket as he straightened up. "Clumsy princess," Scrath muttered. "Hurry up." They finished quickly and returned to their cell. Once the door sealed and they were alone again, Taman carefully retrieved the tool. It was a simple wrench, about 15 centimeters long. The metal was worn but solid. "Perfect," he whispered. With the wrench, Taman could remove screws and bolts. He could pry open panels. He could even use it as a weapon if necessary. It was the first real tool they had. Over the next day, they collected 3 more items during subsequent waste disposal trips. A length of wire, a broken circuit board with sharp edges, a small container that could hold liquid. "Not much," Taman admitted as he examined their small collection. "But engineers work with what they have." "What is the first step?" Hana asked. "I need to study the cell door mechanism more carefully. The lock is electronic, but the actual bolts are mechanical. If I can access the mechanism from inside, I might be able to manually retract the bolts when the power cycles off." "And how do we cycle the power off?" "We do not. We wait for it to cycle naturally. Every ship has power fluctuations when systems switch between modes. When the ship transitions from active operations to standby, there is usually a brief moment when non-critical systems lose power for a second. Lights dim. Doors might unlock for a fraction of a second. That is a very small window." "Yes. But small windows are better than no windows." They continued planning into the night cycle. Hana shared more intelligence she had gathered by listening to the guards. The ship would reach the meeting point with the Krell Syndicate in 2 more days. The ransom negotiations had stalled completely. Captain Drakor was growing impatient. "We have to move tomorrow," Taman said. "The next day will be too late." Agreed. Hana looked at their collection of makeshift tools. "This is not much to bet our lives on." "No," Taman agreed. "But humans have a saying. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Litheron have a similar saying. When the river runs dry, even a single drop of water becomes precious." They sat together in the dim light of the cell, 2 beings from different worlds united by necessity and desperation. Outside their prison, the ship hummed through space, carrying them closer to a fate neither wanted. But inside the cell, something was building. 2 intelligent minds working as one, planning, preparing, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Valkyr thought they had captured 2 helpless prisoners. They were wrong. They had locked 2 dangerous individuals in a room together and given them time to think. That was their mistake. The next morning came with the usual routine. Vrex brought food containers and set them down without speaking. But something was different. The guard seemed nervous, his movements quick and jerky. His eyes kept darting between Hana and the corridor behind him. "Captain wants to see Princess," Vrex said abruptly. "Come, now." Hana stood gracefully. She caught Taman's eye for a brief moment. This was unexpected, not part of their plan. but she kept her face calm as Vrex led her out of the cell. The door sealed, leaving Taman alone. He sat in the darkness and counted seconds. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10. His mind raced through possibilities. Was Dracor interrogating her, threatening her, or had something changed with the ransom negotiations? 20 minutes later, the door opened again. Vrex pushed Hana back inside, roughly. She stumbled but caught herself. The guard left without a word, and the door sealed. "What happened?" Taman asked quietly. Hana's glowing eyes were bright with urgency. "Captain Dracor received a message. The Krell Syndicate is arriving early. They will be here in 8 hours, not 2 days. Dracor wanted to know if my empire would pay a reduced ransom immediately to avoid the sale. I told him no. The Empress Council does not negotiate. 8 hours. Their timeline had just collapsed. We move now," Taman said. "We have no choice." "Agreed. What do you need?" "I need the next guard to be Scrath, the lazy one, and I need a distraction." They prepared quickly. Taman used the sharp edge of the circuit board to scratch away at the wall panel near the door. The panel covered the door mechanism's power supply. It took precious minutes, but he finally managed to pry it loose. Behind it, he could see wires and a small junction box. "This is the power feed for the lock," he explained to Hana. "If I short-circuit it correctly, the lock will release, but it might also trigger an alarm, or it might fry the entire door mechanism and trap us permanently." "Acceptable risks given the alternative," Hana said. They waited. Minutes crawled by like hours. Finally, they heard footsteps, heavy, slow, Scrath. The door opened, and the lazy guard entered with food containers. He set them down carelessly. This was his routine, easy duty, boring duty. He probably thought about finishing his shift and getting back to whatever entertainment the Valkyr enjoyed. He did not notice Hana moving until it was too late. She collapsed suddenly, her body hitting the floor with a convincing thud. Scrath jumped, startled. He took a step closer, his rifle lowering slightly as he bent to check if the princess was injured or dead. That was the opening Taman needed. He lunged forward with the wire in his hands. It was not a good weapon, but it was all he had. He looped the wire around Scrath's neck from behind and pulled with all his strength. The guard roared and thrashed, his hands dropping the rifle as he clawed at the wire. Hana was up in an instant. She grabbed the fallen rifle, but the weapon was biometrically locked to Valkyr handlers. It would not fire for her. Instead, she swung it like a club, striking Scrath's head with a satisfying crack. The guard dropped to his knees, stunned. Taman pulled the wire tighter until Scrath finally went limp, unconscious, but still breathing. They had perhaps 5 minutes before he woke up or before another guard came to check on him. "Help me drag him to the corner," Taman said. They moved the guard's heavy body and took his equipment, a communicator, a keycard, a combat knife. Not much, but infinitely better than what they had before. Taman ran to the door panel he had exposed earlier. Using the knife, he carefully stripped 2 wires and touched them together. Sparks flew, the lock mechanism clicked, the door slid open halfway, then stuck. Good enough. "Go," Taman said. They squeezed through the half-open door into the corridor beyond. Empty for now. Red emergency lights cast everything in an angry glow. Taman tried to remember the route the guards had taken when they led him to waste disposal. The life support hub should be 2 decks below. "This way," he whispered, choosing a direction. They ran through the corridors as quietly as they could. Every footstep seemed too loud. Every breath seemed too harsh. At any moment they expected to hear alarms or shouting guards. They reached a stairwell leading down. Taman descended first, with Hana close behind. The stairs were metal grating that clanged under their feet. Taman winced at the noise, but kept moving. On the lower deck, they encountered their first problem. 2 Valkyr guards stood at the end of the corridor, talking to each other. Between the guards and the escaped prisoners was about 20 meters of open space. No cover, no way around them. Taman pulled Hana back before the guards noticed them. "We need a distraction," he whispered. "Let me try something," Hana said. She took the communicator from her belt and pressed a button. Speaking in what Taman assumed was one of the Valkyr dialects she had mentioned knowing, Hana barked orders into the device. The guards' communicators crackled. They looked at each other in confusion, then started running down a different corridor, away from Taman and Hana. "What did you tell them?" Taman asked as they hurried forward. "I said there was a prisoner escape in the cargo bay, in the voice of a superior officer. It will not fool them for long, but long enough." They reached the life support hub door. It was locked with a keypad. Taman tried Scrath's keycard. The light flashed red. Wrong authorization level. "We could try to bypass it," Taman said, examining the keypad. "But that would take time we do not have." Behind them, they heard an alarm start to wail. The Valkyr had discovered their escape. "We need this door open now," Hana said urgently. Taman made a quick decision. He took the wrench from his pocket and smashed the keypad as hard as he could. Sparks flew. The display shattered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door mechanism clicked and slid open. Emergency protocols. When a lock was damaged, some systems defaulted to unlocked to prevent people from being trapped. They rushed inside and sealed the door behind them. The life support hub was a large room filled with machinery, pumps, filters, climate control systems. Exactly what Taman had hoped for. "Can you lock the door from inside?" Hana asked, watching the entrance nervously. "Working on it." Taman found the manual override panel and engaged the physical bolts. That would slow down anyone trying to enter, at least for a few minutes. The alarm was louder now. They could hear shouting and running footsteps outside. The Valkyr crew was mobilizing. "What now?" Hana asked. Taman moved to the main control console. It was labeled in Valkyr script, but the layout was similar to human systems. Temperature controls, air mixture, pressure regulation. He began adjusting settings rapidly. "I am raising the temperature throughout the ship," he explained as he worked. "Valkyr are cold-blooded. Too much heat makes them slow and sluggish. It will not kill them, but it will make them vulnerable." "How hot?" 40 degrees Celsius. Uncomfortable for them. Manageable for us. Hana watched the temperature readings begin to climb. "How long until it takes effect?" 10 minutes, maybe 15. Taman continued working, locking out the controls so the Valkyr could not reverse his changes from another terminal. "But we have another problem. We are trapped in this room. Eventually, they will cut through that door or find another way in. Then we need leverage, something they want more than they want us dead." Taman thought for a moment. Then an idea struck him. It was insane, but everything about this situation was insane. "The ship," he said. "We take control of the entire ship." "How?" "We are 2 prisoners locked in a life support room. We are 2 prisoners locked in the room that controls whether everyone else can breathe." Taman pointed at the air mixture controls. "I can adjust oxygen levels, make the air too thin, not enough to kill, but enough to make everyone pass out in minutes. That is a threat, not actual control. Threats work if people believe them." Taman moved to the communication panel built into the console. "We broadcast to the whole ship. We tell them to surrender the ship to us, or we make the air unbreathable." Hana stared at him. "You are suggesting we commit piracy. Take their ship. They took us first. This is just fair trade." A smile slowly crossed Hana's face. "I like how humans think. Very direct, very practical." The door behind them began to glow orange. They were cutting through with plasma torches. "We need to do this now," Taman said. Hana nodded. "Make the broadcast." Taman activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice echoed through every corridor and room of the Crimson Talon. "Captain Drakor, this is the human prisoner Taman. Princess Hana and I have taken control of your life support systems. You have two choices. Surrender this ship to us immediately, or we will reduce oxygen levels until everyone aboard loses consciousness. You have 5 minutes to decide." He closed the channel and looked at Hana. "Now we wait." The response came within 2 minutes. Captain Drakor's voice boomed through the communication system, filled with rage. "You think you can threaten me on my own ship? I will cut through this door and tear you apart myself." Taman calmly adjusted the oxygen controls down by 5%. Throughout the ship, the air became subtly thinner. Not enough to notice immediately, but enough to matter. 4 minutes left, Taman said into the microphone. "Every minute you delay, I reduce oxygen by another 5%. At 20% reduction, your crew will start to feel dizzy. At 40%, they will collapse. Your choice, Captain." Silence. Taman could hear the plasma torches still working on the door. The metal was glowing bright orange now. They were maybe 5 minutes from cutting through completely. "He is not taking us seriously," Hana said. "Then we make him serious." Taman reduced oxygen by another 5%. This time, it was enough to notice. Through the door, they heard coughing and confused voices. The Valkyr cutting through the door slowed down, their movements becoming less precise. The communicator crackled. "Stop! Stop what you are doing!" It was a different voice this time, not Drakor. "This is First Officer Krell. We are willing to negotiate." "No negotiations," Taman said firmly. "Surrender or suffocate. Those are your options." "The Krell Syndicate will be here in 6 hours. They will pay for the ship and kill you both for this insult. Then I guess you have 6 hours to decide if you want to be conscious when they arrive. 5% reduction every minute starting now." Taman adjusted the controls again. 10% total reduction. Outside, the sounds of plasma torches stopped. He heard more coughing. Someone shouted in Valkyr. The voices sounded panicked. Hana watched the door carefully. The glowing orange spot was nearly through, but the cutting had stopped. "They are weakening," she said. "Not enough." Taman adjusted the oxygen down another 5%, 15% total. This was getting into dangerous territory. At this level, even humans would start to feel the effects. His own breathing felt slightly labored. Hana's glowing eyes had dimmed a bit. Through the communicator, they heard the sounds of arguing. Valkyr voices raised in anger and fear. Someone was yelling at Drakor. The crew was turning against their captain. 2 minutes left, Taman announced. "Next reduction in 30 seconds. More arguing. Then a new voice came through the communicator, weak, struggling for breath, but unmistakable, Captain Drakor himself. What do you want? I told you. Surrender the ship." "Impossible. I cannot give command to prisoners." "Then you will die as captain of this ship. 20 seconds. "Wait." It was First Officer Krell again. "Captain is unconscious. I am ranking officer now. What are your terms?" Taman and Hana exchanged glances. This was the moment. They had pushed the Valkyr to the breaking point. Now they had to be smart about what came next. "First, restore oxygen to normal levels," Taman said, doing exactly that as he spoke. Fresh air began flowing through the ship's systems. "Second, all crew members go to the cargo bay. Lock yourselves in. Third, give me complete access to the ship's computer systems from this terminal." That is surrender." "Yes, that is the point." A long pause. Taman counted seconds, ready to reduce oxygen again if necessary. Finally, Krell responded. "The crew will not accept this. We are Valkyr. We do not surrender to prey species." "Then think of it differently," Hana said, taking over the communicator. Think of it as a temporary tactical retreat. You are outmaneuvered, outsmarted, but you are alive. That is worth something. And when the Krell Syndicate arrives in 6 hours, you can explain to them why you are locked in your own cargo bay, or you can work with us to avoid that conversation entirely. Another long pause. Then, what do you mean? We do not want your ship permanently, Hana explained, her diplomatic training showing. We want to survive. We want to go home. You want to survive and keep your ship. Perhaps there is a solution that benefits everyone. Taemin understood where she was going. It was risky, but brilliant. Give the Valkyr hope. Give them a reason to cooperate instead of fight. The Krell Syndicate is coming with payment for prisoners they have not received, Hana continued. What if we told them the prisoners escaped, stole the ship, and jumped to hyperspace? You and your crew fought bravely but were overpowered. When the Krell leave, we return your ship to you and go our separate ways. It was a lie, of course, but it was a lie that let the Valkyr save face, that let them survive without shame. Taemin admired Hana's quick thinking. You would return the Crimson Talon? Krell sounded skeptical. We do not want a pirate ship, Taemin said. We want our freedom. Help us get that, and you get your ship back. Fight us, and the Krell Syndicate finds all of you unconscious when they arrive. They might decide to take the ship for themselves and kill the crew for failing. That was the key argument. The Krell were not known for mercy or fairness. If they arrived and found the situation in chaos, they might simply eliminate everyone and claim the ship. The communicator was silent for a full minute. Taemin watched the door. The orange glow was fading as the metal cooled. No one was cutting anymore. Finally, Krell spoke. I need to discuss with senior crew. You have 5 minutes, Taemin said. Then I start reducing oxygen again. The wait was agonizing. Taemin and Hana stood in the life support hub, surrounded by humming machinery. Both were exhausted. Both were injured from their fight with Scrath, but neither dared to relax. Will they accept? Hana asked quietly. They should. It is the smart choice. But pride makes people do stupid things. Valkyr are not stupid. They are raiders because it is profitable, not because they are suicidal. Taemin hoped she was right. The communicator crackled to life. Taemin, Princess Hana, this is First Officer Krell. The crew has voted. We accept your terms. Relief flooded through Taemin. They had done it. Somehow, impossibly, they had taken control of a pirate ship. Smart choice, Taemin said. Now, here is what happens next. All crew members go to the cargo bay immediately. Seal yourselves in. Give me remote access to the ship's bridge computer. Once I verify you have complied, we will discuss the details of our agreement. Understood. Moving crew now. Over the next 30 minutes, Taemin monitored the ship's internal sensors. One by one, life signs moved toward the cargo bay. 15 Valkyr total, including Drakor, who was being carried by 2 crew members. The captain had passed out from oxygen deprivation. When everyone was inside the cargo bay, Krell spoke through the communicator again. We are sealed in. The bridge computer access code is uploading to your terminal now. Taemin checked. The code appeared on his screen. He entered it carefully into the ship's computer system. Access granted. He now had control of navigation, communications, weapons, engines, and all other major systems. We have confirmed, Taemin said. You kept your word. We will keep ours. What now? Krell asked. Now Princess Hana and I go to the bridge. We prepare for the Krell Syndicate's arrival. When they get here, we will follow the story we discussed. You fought bravely, but the prisoners overpowered you and stole the ship. After the Krell leave, we will land the ship somewhere neutral and return it to you. Everyone goes home alive. And if the Krell do not believe this story, then we all have a problem together, but that is better than the alternative. Krell made a sound that might have been Valkyr laughter. You are strange, human. Clever but strange. And you, princess, you are not what I expected from Litheron royalty. I am not what my family expected either, Hana said with a slight smile. That is why they sent me to diplomatic training. Taman unlocked the life support hub door manually. It slid open, revealing an empty corridor. The ship was eerily quiet with all the crew locked away. Let us go, he said to Hana. We have a ship to run. They walked through the corridors toward the bridge. Two escaped prisoners who had just committed the impossible. They had turned a kidnapping into a hijacking. They had transformed from victims into captors. The Crimson Talon was theirs now, at least for the next few hours. And they had to make those hours count, because in 6 hours, the Krell Syndicate would arrive, and that was when things would get really dangerous. The bridge of the Crimson Talon was smaller than Taman expected. Most pirate ships favored functionality over comfort, and this one was no exception. The command chair sat in the center, surrounded by control stations for navigation, weapons, communications, and sensors. Everything was designed for a Valkyr crew, which meant the chairs were too large and the controls were spaced for hands bigger than human or Litheron ones. Taman settled into the captain's chair while Hana took the communications station. Both looked exhausted, but there was no time to rest. 5 hours until the Krell arrive, Hana said, checking the sensor displays. What do we do first? First, we learn how to actually fly this ship, Taman said. Taking control is one thing. Operating it is another. He brought up the ship's computer interface and began studying the systems. The Crimson Talon was indeed a converted freighter, just as he had suspected. The basic design was from a species called the Torvan, but the Valkyr had modified almost everything. Weapons systems grafted onto the hull, armor plating welded over the original structure, engine modifications for extra speed. It was a mess of incompatible technologies held together by improvisation and determination. Taman felt almost at home. Human engineering often looked the same way. The navigation system is surprisingly simple, he said after a few minutes. Whoever modified this ship kept the original Torvan interface. I can work with this. What about weapons? Hana asked. Taman checked. 4 plasma cannons, 2 missile launchers. Nothing that could fight off a Krell battlecruiser, but enough to defend against smaller ships. We are not planning to fight anyone, are we? No, but I want to know our options. Hana pulled up the communications logs and began reading through them. Her glowing eyes scanned the data quickly. The Krell Syndicate contact is called Overseer Vrix. He has been negotiating with Captain Dracor for 3 weeks about various business deals. The prisoners were supposed to be part of a larger transaction. What kind of transaction? Weapons, technology, enslaved beings from a dozen species. Hana's voice was cold with anger. The Krell Syndicate is one of the largest criminal organizations in this sector. They deal in everything illegal. Taman felt his own anger rising. He pushed it down. Emotion would not help them now. Can you access Dracor's personal files? Already doing it. Hana's fingers moved across the controls. He keeps detailed records, routes, contacts, payment accounts, everything. Copy all of it, every file. We might need that information. While Hana worked on copying data, Taman studied the ship's layout more carefully. He noticed something interesting in the cargo bay area. The bay was not just used for storage. It was also equipped with independent life support and environmental controls, almost like it was designed to hold living cargo. Of course, this was a raider ship. They would need secure areas to hold prisoners. An idea began forming in his mind. It was risky, maybe too risky, but it might be their best chance not just to escape, but to actually win this situation. Hana, he said slowly, what if we did not just escape? What if we exposed the entire operation? She looked up from her data copying. What do you mean? Look at this information Dracor kept. Routes, contacts, other raider ships, supply depots. This is a map of an entire criminal network. If we could get this to the right authorities, we could shut down not just Dracor's crew, but dozens of other operations. That would be extremely valuable, but also extremely dangerous. The Krell Syndicate would hunt us forever if we interfered with their business. They are already hunting us. We are escaped prisoners who hijacked a ship. They will want revenge anyway. Taemin leaned forward. But if we give this information to your empire and to the human colonial government, we would have powerful protection. We would be witnesses, assets. They would have to keep us safe. Hana was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she smiled. You are suggesting we turn this from an escape into an intelligence operation? Exactly. I like it, but we still have the immediate problem. The Krell will be here in less than 5 hours. How do we handle them? Taemin thought about it. The original plan was to pretend they had already escaped, but that story had problems. The Krell might search the ship. They might talk to the Valkyr crew and get a different version of events, and if the Krell became suspicious, things would turn violent quickly. We need a better plan, he admitted. One that does not require lying to dangerous criminals who could easily verify our story. What if we did not lie about what happened? Hana suggested. What if we told them the truth, that we escaped, took the ship, and are now returning it to the Valkyr crew? Why would the Krell care about that? Because we could offer them something in exchange for letting us leave peacefully. Information. Dracor's files contain details about his competitors, other raider groups, pirate bases, things the Krell Syndicate would find valuable. Taemin saw where she was going. We sell information to buy our freedom. Information costs us nothing. We are copying the files anyway. Why not use them as currency? It was clever, ruthless, but clever. The Krell might still decide to just take the ship and the information and kill us anyway. Possibly. But the Krell are business-minded. If we present it as a trade, a transaction they might accept. Killing us gains them nothing. Trading with us gains them intelligence they did not expect. Taemin pulled up the sensor data again. When the Krell arrive, we need to be in a position of strength. Or at least appear to be. We need leverage. We have the Valkyr crew as hostages. No, we have an agreement with the Valkyr. If we threaten them now, that agreement breaks down. We need different leverage. He studied the ship's systems more carefully. The engines, the weapons, the self-destruct mechanism. Every ship had a self-destruct system. It was standard safety protocol to prevent ships from falling into enemy hands with critical technology intact. There. He found it in the computer system. The Crimson Talon had a self-destruct sequence that could be armed remotely from the bridge. Once armed, it required 2 authorization codes to disarm, the Captain's Code and the First Officer's Code. I have an idea, Taemin said. But Krell and the Valkyr crew are not going to like it. He opened the communication channel to the cargo bay. First Officer Krell, are you there? I am here, human. What do you want? I need your help with something. It benefits both of us. I am listening. The Krell Syndicate will arrive soon. When they do, they will expect to collect prisoners and pay Captain Dracor. Instead, they will find that prisoners escaped and took the ship. This will make them angry and suspicious. Yes, that is the problem we are all facing. So we need to give them something valuable, something that makes them forget about being angry. I propose we offer them information from Dracor's files, details about other criminal operations that the Krell Syndicate would want to know. Krell was quiet for a moment. You want to betray other raiders to save yourself. I want everyone to survive, including your crew. If the Krell attack us, we all die. If we give them valuable information, they might let us all go. And what do you need from me? I need you to not interfere when I arm the self-destruct sequence. The silence was longer this time. When Krell spoke again, his voice was dangerous. You want to threaten to destroy my ship? I want leverage against the Krell. If negotiations go badly, I need them to know that attacking us means everyone loses. The ship, the crew, everything. It is the only way to guarantee they will listen. This is madness. This is survival, Taman corrected. You accepted our agreement because it was smart. This is the same thing. We arm the self-destruct as insurance. If the Krell accept our trade, nobody dies and you get your ship back. If they attack, nobody gets anything. More silence. Taman could hear voices in the background. The Valkyr crew was arguing amongst themselves. Finally, Krell spoke. If you destroy this ship, you die too. Yes, that is the point. Nobody wins if things go badly. That is what makes it effective leverage. You are insane, human. Maybe. But I am the insane human who is currently controlling your ship's life support and navigation systems. Do we have agreement? A very long pause. Then, reluctantly, we have agreement. Arm your self-destruct. But if you actually trigger it, I will find a way to haunt you in the next life. Deal. Taman closed the channel and looked at Hana. Well, that went better than expected. She laughed, a sound like crystal chimes. You bargain like a Litheron diplomat. Threaten the ship. Get agreement. Immediately move forward before anyone changes their mind. I learned from watching you. Taman armed the self-destruct sequence. A new countdown appeared on the bridge displays. Currently set to inactive, but ready to begin at any moment. He configured it so only he could start the countdown, and only Krell's authorization could stop it. Perfect leverage, mutually assured destruction. 3 hours until the Krell arrive, Hana said. What do we do until then? We prepare, Taman said. Copy every file, study every system, and hope this plan works. They worked in silence for the next hours, preparing for the most dangerous negotiation of their lives. 2 prisoners who had escaped, now trying to bargain with one of the galaxy's most ruthless criminal organizations. It was insane. But it might just work. The Krell Syndicate ship appeared on sensors exactly on schedule. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of the Crimson Talon. The vessel's dark hull bristled with weapons and armor. This was not a transport or cargo ship. This was a warship designed to intimidate and destroy. They are hailing us, Hana said, her voice steady despite the obvious danger. Taman took a deep breath. Open the channel. Audio only. The communication line crackled to life. A voice spoke in Galactic Common, harsh and mechanical. This is Overseer Vrix of the Krell Syndicate. Identify yourself. This is the Valkyr raider ship Crimson Talon, Taman said carefully. But I am not Valkyr. My name is Taman. I am a human prisoner who escaped captivity and took control of this vessel. Silence. Then, you are the prisoner Captain Drakor was ransoming? I was. Now I am offering a trade instead. The Krell Syndicate does not negotiate with escaped prisoners. We will board your ship, recapture you, and take possession of the vessel as compensation for Captain Drakor's failure to deliver. You can try, Taman said calmly. But before you do, you should know 3 things. First, I have armed this ship's self-destruct sequence. Any hostile action will result in the complete destruction of the Crimson Talon and everyone aboard. Second, I have Princess Hana of the Litheron Empire with me. If you harm her, you will have the Litheron military hunting you across the galaxy. Third, I have something valuable to trade. Information that is worth far more than 2 prisoners. Another pause. Longer this time. Taman could imagine the calculations happening on the Krell ship. Risk versus reward. Pride versus profit. What information? Vrix finally asked. Captain Drakor kept detailed records of his operations, routes, contacts, other raider groups operating in this sector, supply depots, financial accounts, everything. This information includes details about several operations that compete directly with the Krell Syndicate's business interests. Why would you give us this information? Because I want to go home alive. Princess Hana wants to return to her empire. You want valuable intelligence. Everyone gets what they want. Nobody dies. Good business. Taman could hear discussion in the background on the Krell ship. Multiple voices arguing in a language he did not recognize. He waited, forcing himself to remain calm. Send us a sample of this information, Vrix demanded. Prove it is valuable. Taman looked at Hana. She nodded and quickly compiled a small data package. Details about one raider base location and one supply route used by a competitor criminal organization. Enough to prove the information was real and useful, but not enough to give away everything. Transmitting now, Hana said, sending the data. More silence. Taman watched the sensors carefully. The Krell ship had not moved, but its weapons were powered and ready. One wrong word, and this would turn into a battle they could not win. This information is acceptable, Vrix said slowly, but not sufficient for the trade you propose. We came here to acquire prisoners worth significant value. Your intelligence is useful, but it does not equal that value. Taman had expected this. Then let me offer additional value. Return me to human colonial space and return Princess Hana to Litheron territory. When we arrive safely, we will transmit the complete data package to you. All of Captain Dracor's files, everything he collected over years of operations. You expect us to trust you? No. I expect you to trust logic. If we betray you, you know exactly where to find us. Humans and Litheron both have fixed territories. We cannot disappear. But if you kill us now, you get nothing. The data is encrypted and will delete itself if I die. Trade with us, and you profit. Attack us, and everyone loses. More discussion on the Krell ship. Taman could feel sweat running down his back despite the cool bridge temperature. Beside him, Hana sat perfectly still, her glowing eyes fixed on the communication panel. This moment would determine everything. Live or die, freedom or death. Overseer Vrix is considering your offer, a different voice said through the communicator. But there is a complication. The Valkyr crew is still aboard your ship. They are witnesses to Krell's syndicate business dealings. They cannot be allowed to report back to authorities. Taman's stomach dropped. They were talking about killing the Valkyr crew. 15 beings locked in the cargo bay, defenseless. The Valkyr crew has agreed to return to their own territory and not report any of this, Taman said quickly. They get their ship back, and everyone pretends this transaction never happened. They have no incentive to report anything because that would expose their own illegal activities. Incentives change. Dead witnesses do not talk. Taman made a quick decision. Then the trade is off. I will not purchase my freedom with innocent lives. If you want the Valkyr dead, you will have to destroy this entire ship. And when you do, you get nothing. No intelligence, no prisoners. Just a debris field and questions from multiple governments about why a Krell warship attacked a Valkyr raider vessel. Hana looked at him with surprise. They both knew the smart, cold choice was to let the Valkyr die. It would be safer, cleaner. But Taman could not make that choice. The Valkyr had kidnapped him, yes, but they had also honored their agreement. Krell had kept his word. You would die to protect pirates who kidnapped you? Vrix sounded genuinely curious. I would die to keep my honor, Taman said simply. Humans value honor. We do not purchase freedom with betrayal. If that is not acceptable to you, then destroy us now and be done with it. The silence stretched out forever. Taman's hand hovered over the self-destruct activation. If the Krell weapons started charging, he would trigger it. At least they would not die as cowards. Then Vrix laughed. It was a horrible sound, like metal grinding against stone. But it was laughter. You are an unusual human, Vrix said. Most beings beg for their lives. You negotiate like you are in a position of strength when you clearly are not. I find this interesting. The Krell Syndicate accepts your terms. All of them. We will transport you and the princess to neutral territory. The Valkyr crew will be allowed to take their ship and leave. You will transmit the complete data package when you reach safety. Taman could barely believe it. Agreed. How do we proceed? We will dock with your ship. You and the princess will transfer to our vessel. The Valkyr crew will be released and given control of their ship again. If you attempt any deception, we will destroy the Crimson Talon with all hands aboard. Understood. We will prepare for docking. The channel closed. Taman sat back in the captain's chair and let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. They had done it. Somehow, impossibly, they had negotiated survival. That was the most terrifying thing I have ever experienced, Hana said quietly. And I once had to give a speech to the Galactic Council about trade sanctions. Taman laughed, despite himself. We are not safe yet. We still have to actually complete this transfer. I know, but we have a chance now. That is more than we had yesterday. Over the next hour, the situation unfolded exactly as Vrix had promised. The Krell ship docked with the Crimson Talon. Taman and Hana gathered the copied data and prepared to transfer. Before they left the bridge, Taman opened the communication channel to the cargo bay one last time. First Officer Krell, we are leaving now. The ship is yours again. The self-destruct is disarmed. Our agreement is complete. Krell's response was grudging, but respectful. You kept your word, human. I did not expect that. Safe travels to you and the princess. Safe travels to you as well. Maybe we will meet again under better circumstances. Let us hope not. No offense. Taman smiled. None taken. The transfer to the Krell ship was smooth. The Krell soldiers who escorted them were professional and efficient. They were brought to a secure passenger area, comfortable but clearly locked. The ship departed immediately, leaving the Crimson Talon behind. 3 days later, the Krell ship arrived at Waypoint 7, a neutral space station on the border between multiple territories. Taman and Hana were released exactly as promised. As soon as they were safely in the station, they transmitted the complete data package to the Krell Syndicate. Then they transmitted copies to entirely different recipients: the Human Colonial Defense Force, the Litheron Imperial Intelligence Service, the Galactic Security Council. Every major authority in the sector received complete copies of Captain Dracor's files, routes, contacts, operations, everything. Within a week, coordinated raids across 12 systems dismantled dozens of criminal operations. The Valkyr Raider network was scattered, supply depots were seized, criminals were arrested or driven into hiding. It was the largest blow to organized piracy in decades. Taman and Hana became heroes, celebrated across multiple worlds. Earth's government awarded Taman the Colonial Medal of Valor. The Litheron Empire gave Hana the Star of Diplomatic Excellence for her role in securing crucial intelligence. But more importantly, their actions sparked a new cooperation between humanity and the Litheron. The two species had been distant before, separated by different philosophies and approaches. But Taman and Hana had proven that working together they could achieve the impossible. 6 months after their escape, they stood together on Waypoint 7 again, this time as free beings, as partners. Hana had requested that Taman join her diplomatic team as a special consultant. The Litheron Empire wanted human perspective on security matters, and Taman's unique experience made him perfect for the role. "Do you ever think about what happened?" Hana asked as they watched ships come and go from the station's observation deck. "Every day," Taman admitted. "Sometimes I still cannot believe we survived." "We did more than survive. We won. We turned a kidnapping into victory. We got lucky." Luck had nothing to do with it. Hana turned to face him, her glowing eyes bright. "We succeeded because we worked together, because we refused to give up, because we saw opportunity where others saw only defeat." Taman smiled. Very diplomatic way of saying we were too stubborn to die. "Exactly." Hana laughed. That is the human spirit. That is what your people bring to the galaxy: determination, ingenuity, the refusal to accept the impossible. Your people bring wisdom and strategy. We balance each other well. Yes, we do. Hana looked out at the stars again. I am glad the Valkyr kidnapped you. I know that sounds strange, but it is true. If they had not, we would never have met. This partnership would never have existed. Taman nodded. He understood. Sometimes terrible circumstances led to remarkable outcomes. Their friendship, forged in captivity and tested in danger, had become something neither expected but both valued. A new ship was approaching the station, their ship, a diplomatic vessel provided by the Litheron Empire, equipped for long-range missions. They had work to do, systems to visit, relationships to build between their two species. Ready for the next adventure? Hana asked. Taman picked up his equipment bag. Inside was his engineering toolkit. The wrench he had used to escape still had a place of honor among his tools. A reminder of where they had been and what they had survived. Ready, he said. They walked toward the docking bay together, a human engineer and a Litheron princess, two beings who should never have met but were now inseparable partners. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of opportunities, and they were ready to face whatever came next. Together.